I will often see individuals who call me, email me regarding a situation where their significant other is in the United States or abroad, and they either have married or are intending to marry. And again, the rules differ depending upon whether the to-be spouse is located abroad or in the United States, because if he or she is in the United States, they would adjust status here, as opposed to consular processing abroad. When you are already married and your spouse is located outside the United States, then the consular processing will need to take place so that the spouse will come with his or her immigrant visa. But the rules again are different when someone is in the United States. So if someone comes to me and says, I have just gotten married, my spouse is in the United States, he or she has a certain visa, and I would like to sponsor my spouse for the green card, then typically the way we would handle it is call both spouses into the office if possible, and make sure there are no issues of inadmissibility to determine that the individual should qualify. We discuss the criteria for marriage-based cases, which require interviews for both spouses at the immigration office. So we like to let them know in advance what kinds of questions they will face, what kind of documentation they will need to show good faith marriage, and generally explain the process from beginning until end, how the spouse can obtain work authorization, how the spouse will undergo the biometrics process, the fingerprints and the digital photographs, and again, what can be expected at the time of the interview as well. So we walk the individual through the entire process, file all of the petitions and relevant documentation on behalf of the individual, including the request for work authorization and the permission to travel abroad while the case is pending, and then advise them on the biometrics when the notice comes. It's typically about 3 or 4 months, at least here in South Carolina, when the interview will eventually be scheduled. And at that time, both spouses must appear, submit to questioning from an immigration officer, and at that time they need to prove the bona fides of the marriage. Now, if they've been married within the previous 2 years, then the initial green card awarded to the foreign spouse will only be 2 years. It is a green card, but it has a conditional status attached to it. So the initial green card is good for 2 years, but it requires both parties to check back in with the Immigration Service and file an application in the 90 days before the card will expire to show that the marriage is still existing and is still a good faith one, and present many of the same documentation that they would at the initial interview. Some of the documentation to prove the bona fides of the marriage might include a joint tax return, a lease where both of them are signatories, a mortgage, insurance documentation together, bills or invoices that come to the house for addressed to both of them, and sometimes photographs and affidavits from friends and family as appropriate.